Hey there. I hope I'm not too late. Looks like maybe just a minute. Let me just get set up here and we will get started with our Let's Coach session. All right, I just got off another call, so I'm coming in back to back, but I think we're going to get started in 1 second. Let me just get my notes. All right. So welcome to another Let's Coach session here at Life Coach University. My name is Norma Frahn. I'm a life coach and integrative nutrition health coach, and I'm here every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So one of the things about me, I like to call myself an emotional eating coach. I work with women to help them really make peace with food, to stop the dieting and binging cycle, and really reconnect with their bodies, kind of this inside out work, so that they can really let go of or loosen the grip that emotional eating has on their lives. And what I like to do here in Let's Coach is just share some of those concepts and ideas and just see where it goes in terms of questions and coaching opportunities. So before I start then with my topic for the day, just a quick reminder on how you can get coaching. If you're watching live and you'd like to speak to me live, we can go ahead and bring you up on, we'll call it the stage or in the office or whatever it is. We'll bring you on live. And all you need to do to make that happen is raise your virtual hand at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Just click that button. I'll see it come on and we'll bring you up. The other way, and it seems to be our most popular way, is to use the Q&A box. And all you need to do there is open the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom screen, type in your question or your comment, and I'll keep my eye on it. I've got two screens going here. So when I keep looking over to the side, that's what I'm doing. As soon as I see something come in, I'll stop and try to answer that. And then you can also just listen. This is some of the best coaching I ever received was simply by listening to someone else be coached or listening to the topic that the coach was presenting. I've always been able to pull out something that applies to me, even if maybe the overarching topic wasn't the thing I needed coaching on. I always found something in there that was helpful. So sometimes just listening is the best way to get what you need. Sometimes you get things that you didn't even know you needed until you sat down and just listened to a coaching session. So on that note, just a reminder, you can find the Let's Coach schedule on lifecoachuniversity.com. You can see all of the different coaches that are coaching. I think we have somebody almost every day of the week, and all from different backgrounds, different coaching modalities, styles, the whole thing. But like I said, it doesn't matter really who you sit in and listen. You're going to find something that works. So check out that schedule. And whenever you need to take a few minutes just to maybe just shift down a little bit and clear your head, hop over there and see if there's a Let's Coach session you can listen to. I think that'll be the thing that'll give you some energy and get you charged back up. All right. So let's talk a little bit about my topic today. So something that I've been noticing, if I've been around Life Coach University for a while, you may know that I spoke for about a year or so on this concept of weight loss your way. And I still do believe that it is possible to lose weight your way and not have it be focused on a really restrictive diet or meal plan. But people are often really surprised when they hear me say that I don't believe in diets, at least not as we know them. The traditional somebody else's diet plan that's very restrictive and really keeps you caught up in relying on something external to you to tell you how to eat. So that kind of dieting, no, I've done it my entire adult life almost. And I know there's a better way, and it's my way. But as a health coach, I know that message for a health coach to say, I don't believe in diets might seem a little off, or maybe even give some mixed messages. But so I wanted to talk about the approach that I take that's a little bit different and that frankly, it gets results. And I think it's important to talk about. It's this inside out approach to changing your relationship with food in your body. And that approach works. And everything I teach is about feeling peaceful in your both your mind and your body, especially when it comes to food. And I do this inside out work, which is really helping you become self-compassionate and being able to recognize that your relationship with food is actually a symptom of the relationship you have with yourself. It's all connected. It's never just about the food. The food is just a vehicle that we use that just kind of represents how we're feeling about our own relationship with ourselves. Hope that makes sense. But by listening to you're what you're really asking your by listen, let me start again. I can't speak today. By listening to what you're really asking for when you want to eat, you're going to find some really interesting answers. Like one of my favorite questions is, what am I hungry for? I love that question because oftentimes it's not food. Typical scenario, at least it is for me. I'll sometimes find myself wandering around my kitchen like at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I know I'm not hungry. I don't even know what I'm looking for when I'm there because I know what's there. I put it all there. But yet I'm in the pantry and I'm in the fridge and nothing looks good. When I catch myself doing that, I stop and say, wait a minute, what are you really hungry for? And in most cases, it's just a break. I've been working all day. I'm tired. I have a pretty stressful day job. And 3 o'clock hits and I'm kind of done. And I'm looking for some relief. So naturally, because food has been my coping mechanism of choice most of my life, I'm find myself in the kitchen. But when I can stop that thought and change and ask myself, what am I really hungry for? Oh, it's a break. Why don't you just go sit down with a cup of tea and just relax? And that usually always does it. So that's what I mean about kind of inside out. It's like looking inward and asking what you need. And this is really the kind of the thing that my community membership, Mind, Body, and Plate, really digs into, is all of those things that we have to unlearn so that we can make peace with our bodies and really break free from all of that toxic dieting and weight gain and worrying about weight gain and all of that stuff that we've just spent so much time with. So like I said, dieting, as most of us know it, really creates this kind of obsessive mindset. We get really focused on just the weight and the calories and the counting and the charting and the apps and all the things. And there's always good food and bad food. And all that stuff it creates a whole lot of guilt and shame, because following those things so precisely is difficult, if not impossible sometimes, because they are so restrictive and they're not meeting your true needs. Food isn't going to meet all of those needs. So anyway, my approach is to really kind of scrap all of that noise, look inward, and give yourself what you really need. Now, one of the reasons I think a lot of us really struggle with emotional eating is that we are so stinking good at taking care of everybody else that we forget to put our own needs on the to-do list. And when we start to feel like things are missing in our lives, again, we've learned over the years that food brings comfort and it fills that gap. It's a really easy go-to when you've just got no gas left in the tank because you've given it to everybody else, and emotionally you need something. Food is really easy. That's also why it makes it so complicated. So instead of dieting and taking away that comfort, doesn't it make so much more sense to listen and ask yourself what you really need, and then find the ways to give yourself that thing that you really need? So another great question. What do I need to feel taken care of right now? Like in that first example of me like wandering around my kitchen, I needed to feel some relief from my day. I needed to rest. I needed to step away, sit down, and rest. And it took a lot of time of practicing and really like stopping myself and saying, whoops, wait a minute, what are you hungry for? What do you need right now that food's not going to give you? And over time and practice, it's become kind of my go-to question. I actually ask myself that before I find myself in the kitchen. All right. So whether you decide, to eat that thing or not in the moment, in that moment of needing comfort, that isn't nearly important though, as what you do consistently. And maybe you've heard me say this if you've been here before. I really like to practice this process of, or this mindset of, most of the time and some of the time. So if you're in one of those moments where you're reaching for food and you just need some comfort or whatever it is, and you decide to eat that thing, that's okay. That's a some of the time thing. Most of the time, I know I feed myself food that makes me feel good, that takes care of me. And sometimes there's going to be days when only an Oreo or two is actually going to do the trick. But now I can enjoy those Oreos, one or two of them or three of them, whatever it is, without the guilt or shame. And those handful of Oreos is not going to, I believe it now, is not going to destroy all of the work I've done to become a person who takes care of themselves most of the time. It's just a some of the time thing, and I can live with that, and it satisfies my needs. So your job is to identify what you really want and how to fulfill that, simply by just asking yourself, is this thing that I'm about to do, whether it's food or some food or shopping or whatever it is this going to make me feel good? That's always a great place to start. If it's just going to be a temporary feel good in the moment thing, and then a few minutes later, you're going to be beating yourself up because you either ate or you shopped or you did whatever it is that you do to comfort yourself, are you going to feel good then? And then that's just a great place to push the pause button and make a different decision if you think that perhaps, no, I'm going to feel worse if I do that. So this kind of kind and gentle way, this is what creates the sustainable relationship with yourself and your food. It's not about wanting it and not letting yourself have it like the diets do. That's a miserable way to live, and it's not at all sustainable. It's more about giving yourself permission and being able to have it some of the time and not wanting it most of the time, like we do when we're restricting. It's more of like an intuitive and really empowered way to kind of create that freedom from being like chained to that diet and always restricting yourself. But when you find what takes care of you, what feels good for you, you're going to find the need or the draw to the food to become less and less. So freedom comes from consistently making those decisions that make you feel good. So I hope that made sense and kind of gave a little bit of color to how I like to think about that, your relationship with food and yourself. Let's see if we've got some questions. Yes, so I've got one attendee. Let's see, says, I just answered that question, what am I hungry for? And I was surprised that my first answer was help and support. Awesome, yes. Been on the road all day, working, tired, frazzled. I overate today to get through the day. Okay, first of all, completely normal. Everything that you just described here is completely normal. And food is a coping mechanism. And I don't know like what your history is with that. If it's your primary coping mechanism, it makes perfect sense that that's the first thing you reach for when you're tired and frazzled and overwhelmed. But I'm glad that that helped for you. But when you took that little pause and just asked, what am I hungry for? And gave yourself just a minute, 30 seconds even, to think about that, it usually comes to you right away. It's like, oh, I just need some help. And now that you know, now you can ask for that help, right? So it's such a great way to just kind of stop the train and take a breath and see if there's something else that might actually make you feel even better than food or overeating, whatever it is that you have. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love it when we get real live examples. Let's see. What other questions do we have? Yeah, this is a good one. Why do so many of us struggle with emotional eating? This is really interesting because I was in a networking event actually on Wednesday, and I was talking about being emotional eating coach. And I think every single group I spoke to, someone said the same thing. Oh my gosh, everybody's an emotional eater. And you know what? They're right. Emotional eating, first of all, and this is my position. Well, let me take a step back. First of all, I'm not a fan of the term emotional eating simply because it has so much negativity attached to it. And that's out of the whole diet culture thing. But it's nomenclature we all know. So I'm just going to roll with emotional eating, but and not try to change it and confuse it even more. So here's how I think about emotional eating. We are all emotional eaters. Every human that's walking the planet is an emotional eater because we are emotional beings. And I kind of teach this through the lens of internal family systems, or IFS, which basically says there's different parts of us that experience emotions and has different thoughts about different things in our lives. And our emotional eating parts, I believe, were developed as far back as infancy. As infants, we learned that our emotions were soothed by food. We were nurtured and soothed by food. When we felt hungry, we cried, someone fed us. When we needed to be close to a human, we needed that touch, because it's food and touch are the two things that newborn babies need the most to thrive. We cried and we were held and we were given a bottle. And we just made that connection naturally in our brain that food is comforting. And then we grew up and we became children. We grew up as teenagers and adults, and that connection to food and comfort just evolved. It just evolved and changed with us. Now then add on to that this idea that we are an emotional eating society is tremendous. I mean, we celebrate with food, we grieve with food, we socialize with food. It's a big part of our existence. So to say I'm never going to emotionally eat again is, I think, almost impossible. I think it's an impossible thing to do. But what we can do is learn about our emotional eating behaviors, where they came from, like how those parts developed, and then work with them. Just like I talked about, finding out what you really need. What is that part of you that's feeling anxious or sad or upset? What does that part of you need that we've just naturally reached for food to do? And in the past, what can we give it besides food? What does it really need? So that's why I think so many of us are emotional eaters. We are all emotional eaters. It's just when food becomes our primary mechanism to cope with our lives, those emotional eating parts of us become much more extreme, and they actually kind of are trying to drive the bus. They're running the show. So learning about them, learning how to work with them instead of pushing them away or trying to end emotional eating or stop emotionally eating. Let's learn to tend to it, tend to your emotions instead of pushing them away or pushing them down. So that's how I like to think about that. Let's see, what do we have next? Oh, this is a great question. How do you determine whether to eat certain foods that make you feel good or bring pleasure? I think it's gonna be kind of determined by your answer to that first question. What are you hungry for? Now, there's going to be times when you'll be able to say, yeah, like our participant said earlier, I just needed some help. I just needed some support. And just knowing that may have been enough that she decided that perhaps I don't need to turn to the food. But sometimes you just want a little comfort, and it's just okay to sit down and have a bowl of ice cream. You know, most of the time we naturally prefer foods that make us feel good in a healthy way, in an energetic way. And there's going to be times when other foods that we just enjoy them because of just the pure pleasure of them, we can have those things. It's that balance, like I talked about, of consistency. Most of the time, I'm going to choose the foods that feel and they're good for my body. They take care of me. And some of the time, I'm just going to have the bowl of ice cream because it's just what I want. And that's where it gets a little bit tricky. There's no judgment. You just make a decision and you move on. Let's see. We have another comment from or maybe it's question. Here we go. Food and get-togethers with my family are my biggest nightmare. If I don't eat, they make comments. If I do eat, they make comments. How do I ignore people's comments? Oh my goodness, such a good one, and so very common. This is one of the things that it breaks my heart, because I did this too. I would oftentimes just not go, just to avoid these things, just to avoid having to deal with other people's comments, or not, because sometimes they'll say things like she said, because you're eating, so they comment, you're not eating, they comment. I would just stay home and isolate myself. So first of all, I just want to acknowledge that this is wonderful that you're asking this question, because that means you're willing to go. You're willing to go to these events and figure this out. So thank you for doing that. So how do you ignore other people's comments? There's no answer that I can say that's going to magically work for you. It's an act of real self-compassion to be able to go and know that someone's likely going to say something, whether it's intentional or not, that might be hurtful to you, but deciding how you're going to respond. Because there's this like space between the comment that's made and how you react to it. And it's in that space that you get to decide what you're going to make that mean. So kind of the upper hand that you have in a situation like this, you're kind of expecting these people to make comments. So it's going to happen. So maybe spend some time before this family function just thinking about, okay, when this happens, here's how I'll react, or maybe even figure out a response, because there's something to this kind of visualizing in advance that helps kind of mentally prepare you to be in that moment. And here's the really crazy thing I think about our brains, because as smart as they are, and we're only nicking the surface of what our brains can do, but they're really kind of stupid when it comes to visualization. Our brains, when you visualize a very specific situation, what words are being said, how you're responding to those words, and you do it over and over again, your brain actually thinks that situation really happened. So when you're in it, when you get to that family event and Uncle Bob says that really kind of hurtful comment, your brain says, oop, I know, we already did this. Here's what you're going to say. And it just comes right out of your mouth so much easier. So there's tremendous power in visualizing and just knowing up front that they're probably going to make these comments, but it's up to you how you're going to respond. And because you're not going to change them. You're just not. You can't control another human and what they say and do. All you have is how you respond to it. So why not put in some effort on the front end and be prepared for it, rather than hoping and praying they don't say these things, because they're likely will. Hope that helped. All right, I think we have time for one more. Let's see. I'm just going through a list that I got from some of my clients when we had the same conversation. We did emotional eating. All right, yeah, this was a good one too. How does your approach, meaning my approach, I think, help in feeling peaceful in your body and mind? So I think what my approach does to really kind of help feel peaceful is it emphasizes this idea of self-compassion, and it's in looking inward and understanding what you truly need versus what you might want in the moment. So we talked a lot about that. So I don't want to waste a lot of time there, because I do see one other question come up. And it's more about exploring these deeper reasons behind our food cravings. and why we find and how big we find different ways to fulfill those needs. So that goes back to asking yourself, what is it? What are you really hungry for? And then some of the harder work is actually, well, how do I get that help or support or that relaxation? That's where the hard part comes in, is actually following through with that, recognizing what you need, and then giving it to yourself. And that's where consistency comes in too. When you do that consistently, it's so much easier. Okay, back to our person who has the family get together. What would be some examples of what I could say? I don't want to be rude. All right, yeah, this is tricky. So I'm not exactly sure what kind of, like you said, if they don't eat, you make comments like, okay, so hey, if someone says, hey, I noticed you're not eating, you on a diet again? That's kind of something I used to hear all the time. And I would just simply say, no, I'm just not hungry right now, and leave it at that. Oftentimes the shorter, quicker answers, that they will shut down the conversation so much quicker. So let me think if I can give you another one. So no, I'm not hungry right now. Or someone might say, maybe they say something on the other side of it is, oh, wow, you're going back for seconds? Kind of like, how dare you? Don't you see you shouldn't eat that much? I know that's kind of you're making up the other side of that conversation in your head, but if someone like questions the amount of food you're eating, maybe the answer is you'll put them right off guard. You just say something like, I am really hungry today. I don't know what's wrong with me. And just get up and walk away. If you don't make a big deal about it, they won't make a big deal about it. And sometimes it stops them, like I said, dead in their tracks. Just like if someone compliments you, and if that makes you a little nervous about, oh, it looks like you've lost weight. Thank you, I'm working hard. And exit stage left. You don't need to carry the conversation on. You don't owe them an explanation or a story or anything else. It's keep it short, keep it crisp, answer the question, and move on and get out of there. I think that's the thing that always worked the best for me. Hope that was helpful. All right, we are coming up at the end of our 30 minutes together. I swear, some of these conversations I could do for days. So one last reminder, don't forget to check out the schedule on the Life Coach University website for other Let's Coach sessions. I will be back here again next Friday and every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. If you have other questions, and I'll speak kind of directly to the participant that's been asking some questions about food and get-togethers and dealing with family, I would be happy to chat with you more. If you'd like to send me an email, my name is right in the corner. It's support@normafrahncoaching.com. And I would be more than happy to talk to you about this some more, because I know this is tricky. Like I said, you're taking the brave step and trying to figure out how to navigate it. Whereas I got to the point where I chose to isolate myself and not go. And I don't want that to ever happen to you or anyone else. So I would love to chat with you more. I think that is everything. So have a beautiful weekend, have an uncomplicated weekend, and take care of yourself. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.